A week. That's how long it took for the world to feel normal again. The screaming echo of twisted metal, the coppery smell of blood that clung to the inside of my nose for days, it finally started to fade. In my line of work, you have to let it fade. You pack the horror away in a little box in the back of your mind, or you don't survive. The man from the crash, Alexander Sterling, was just another box. A very rich, very famous box, sure, but a box all the same. I'd done my job, kept him alive until the surgeons could take over. End of story. I was in the hospital locker room, peeling off my scrubs after a grueling 12-hour shift, when I saw it. Tucked into the vent of my locker was a single flower stem. But it wasn't a rose or a carnation. It was black. A deep, velvety black lavender. I'd never seen one in real life. I pulled it out, my fingers tracing the delicate, dark petals. This stuff was insanely rare. I remembered scrolling through some website months ago, seeing a picture of it and saying out loud to Maya, my best friend, how beautiful and strange it was. Taped to the stem was a small, thick card. The handwriting was sharp, elegant. For giving me more time. A.S. My eyebrows drew together. Black lavender. How in the world? It had to be a coincidence. A really, really weird coincidence. Rich people have their ways, I told myself. They probably have assistants who just Google weird, expensive flowers to send as thank you gifts. I shoved the flower into my locker, trying to ignore the small, cold knot forming in my stomach. It was just a flower. A few days later, the feeling came back, stronger this time. I was sitting on my old, lumpy couch, scrolling through my phone when an email popped up. It was from a high-end furniture store I'd never heard of. The subject line read, "Your delivery confirmation." I opened it. It was a receipt for a custom-made sofa, paid in full. Delivery scheduled for tomorrow morning. What the hell? I'd never ordered this. I immediately called the number on the email. "Hi, I think there's been a mistake," I said, my voice tight. "I received a confirmation for a sofa I didn't order. The name is Sarah Jenkins." The woman on the other end clicked on her keyboard for a moment. "Ah, yes, Miss Jenkins, the Sterling account. It's all paid for. There's a note here from the purchaser." There was a pause. It says, "This color will suit her apartment walls much better." Is that not correct? My blood ran cold. How? How could he know the color of my walls? I painted them myself, a specific shade of stormy gray that took me a week to get right. I hadn't posted any pictures online. "No," I managed to say, "it's not correct. Please cancel the order." I hung up before she could reply, my hand shaking. I walked over to my window and looked down at the street, a sudden urge to check for anyone watching. This wasn't normal. That night, I was on a video call with Maya, telling her about a silly dream I had about us taking a trip to the Swiss Alps. We laughed about it for a good 10 minutes. Not 5 minutes after we hung up, I was scrolling through my social feed and an ad popped up. A sponsored post from Sterling International. It was a luxury travel package to the Swiss Alps. It's the algorithm, I thought, my heart thumping against my ribs. The phones are always listening. Everyone knows that. It happens to everyone. But it didn't feel like it was happening to everyone. It felt like it was happening only to me. I went through all my social media accounts and set them to private. It felt like a useless gesture, like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. The next morning, I decided I needed to get out. I went to my favorite little coffee shop down the street, the one I went to every Saturday. The smell of coffee beans and pastries usually calmed me down, but today nothing worked. I walked up to the counter, ready to give my usual order. Before I could speak, the barista, a kid named Leo, slid a cup across the counter. "Oat milk latte, half a spoon of sugar," he said with a smile. "Mr. Sterling took care of it for you." My head snapped up. I followed his gaze to a corner table by the window. There he was, Alexander Sterling. He looked nothing like the broken man I'd pulled from the wreck. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, he looked powerful, immovable, and he was smiling at me. It wasn't a warm smile. It was a smile of ownership. I felt frozen. My feet were rooted to the floor. How did you know I'd be here? I finally whispered, my voice barely audible. And my coffee? He stood up and walked towards me, his movements smooth and confident. He stopped a few feet away. I just wanted to make sure the woman who saved my life was having a good morning, he said, his voice a low, pleasant rumble. You deserve the best of everything, Sarah. Hearing him say my name sent a wave of nausea through me. I grabbed the coffee cup, the heat of it doing nothing to warm my icy hands. I didn't say thank you. I just turned and walked straight out of the shop, his eyes burning into my back the entire way. I dumped the coffee into the first trash can I saw. Driving home, the pieces slammed together in my mind. The flower wasn't a coincidence. The sofa wasn't a mistake. The ad wasn't an algorithm. His showing up at my coffee shop wasn't a chance encounter. He knew what I liked. He knew what I talked about. He knew what I drank. He knew where I was. Oh God, he's watching me. This wasn't gratitude. This was something else. Something possessive and terrifying. For the first time, I felt a tremor of real fear. It was a physical thing, a cold snake coiling in my gut. When I got out of my car, I checked underneath it, my heart pounding, looking for something, anything, a little black box that didn't belong. I scanned the faces of people walking down the street, wondering if any of them were watching me for him. I needed to talk to someone. I needed Maya. As soon as I was inside my apartment, I locked the door and called her, my hands fumbling with the phone. Maya, you're not going to believe this, I said, the words spilling out in a rush. I told her everything. The flower, the sofa, the ad, the coffee shop. I expected her to gasp, to tell me to call the cops, to be as freaked out as I was. But she just listened. When I was done, there was a pause. Then she spoke, her voice weirdly calm, gentle. Sarah, she said slowly, don't you think you might be overreacting a little? I mean, the guy is a billionaire. He probably just wanted to be nice. Honestly, he sounds like a good person. She let out a little laugh. He actually called me earlier, just to ask if there was anything you needed. Seemed really sweet. I stopped breathing. A good person? Maya never used words like that. Sweet? And her voice? It didn't sound like her. It sounded hollow, like she was reading lines someone else had written for her. My throat went dry. Alexander hadn't just found me. He'd gotten to her. He'd gotten to my best friend, my last line of defense. I have to go, I whispered, and hung up the phone. The silence of my apartment pressed in on me from all sides. It wasn't a safe space anymore. It was just a room he could see inside of, a room he could put things in. I was completely, utterly alone. In a panic, I grabbed my keys and ran out of the apartment, not knowing where I was going, just needing to be anywhere else. I bolted down the stairs and burst out the main entrance of my building. And I stopped dead. There were two men on my doorstep. They were wearing uniforms from a home security company. They had toolboxes open on the ground, and they were in the middle of installing a brand new, top-of-the-line security system on my front door, complete with a keypad and a small black camera. One of the men saw me and smiled. Ms. Jenkins, we're almost done here. He held out a small, sleek box. These are your new digital keys. I didn't take it. My eyes were fixed on the new camera. It was aimed right at me. The man pulled a thick, cream-colored card from his pocket. Oh, and Mr. Sterling asked us to give you this. My hand trembled as I took it. The same sharp, elegant handwriting. To keep you safe. A.S. I looked up from the card, back to the cold, dark lens of the camera. It stared back, unblinking. He wasn't just watching me anymore. He was building the walls. I stood there on the pavement, my front door propped open by a man in a blue uniform, the cold eye of a new camera staring at me. My key, the old metal one, felt useless in my hand, obsolete. The man held out the little plastic box with the new digital keys. I just stared at the card in my other hand. To keep you safe. My stomach twisted. Safe from what? Or safe for whom? The next day at work was a blur. I went through the motions, checking vitals, restocking the ambulance, writing reports. Every siren sounded like a warning. Every new patient's face made me flinch, half expecting to see him. I was trying so hard to just hold on to one piece of my life that he hadn't touched yet. My job. It was mine. He couldn't take that. At 4 p.m., my shift supervisor, Mike, called me into his office. He had this look on his face, the kind people get when they have to do something they don't want to do. He couldn't meet my eyes. "Sarah," he started, shuffling papers on his desk, "we have to let you go." The words didn't even register at first. What? Why? Did I mess something up on the call last night? No, nothing like that. We've had some complaints about your attitude, that you've been unprofessional. Bullshit. Complete and utter bullshit. I'd given this job everything for 5 years. I was good at it. Everyone knew I was good at it. My hands started to shake. I clenched them into fists under the table. "Who complained?" I asked, my voice flat. "What did I supposedly do?" Mike finally looked at me, and his eyes were full of something I couldn't quite place. Pity? Fear? "I can't get into specifics, Sarah. The decision has been made. HR will email you the details." I stood up, my chair scraping against the cheap linoleum floor. I didn't say anything else. There was nothing to say. I knew who was behind this. I walked out of his office, grabbed my bag from my locker, the one he'd put the black lavender in, and left without looking back. Sitting in my car in the parking lot, I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so bad it took 3 tries to unlock it. And there it was, an email that had arrived 10 minutes ago. The sender was the Orion Clinic, some high-end private medical facility downtown. I'd never heard of it. The subject line was, "Your offer of employment." I opened it. The letter offered me a position as a senior paramedic liaison, whatever the hell that was. The salary was triple what I was making. At the very bottom of the email, in small print, was the clinic's parent company, Sterling International. My breath hitched in my chest. Shit, he wasn't just watching, he was directing. He'd fired me from the one thing that was mine, only to offer me a golden leash. He wanted me to be dependent on him. He wanted me to have nowhere else to turn. I deleted the email. Then I went into my mapping app and typed in the name of the small town my grandmother used to live in, 4 hours away. No interstates, just winding country roads. I was getting out tonight. Back in my apartment, the camera above the door felt like it was burning a hole in my back as I fumbled with the new key fob. Inside, the air was still and cold. I grabbed the biggest suitcase I owned and started throwing clothes into it. Jeans, sweaters, socks. I wasn't thinking, just moving. I had to move. If I stopped, the fear would swallow me whole. That's when I smelled it. It started faint, just a whisper, sandalwood and something else, rich, like old leather. His cologne. The scent from the coffee shop. I froze, a pair of jeans halfway into the suitcase. No, it's not real. You're just stressed out. I checked the new security lock on the door. It was solid green, locked. I went to the window and pushed it open. Cold night air rushed in, but the scent didn't go away. It got stronger. It was like he was standing right behind me. I could almost feel the warmth of a body, the phantom touch of a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nothing. The room was empty. but the smell was there, thick in the air, in my throat, in my lungs. I gagged, stumbling back, and slammed the window shut. It lingered for another minute, a suffocating, invisible presence, and then, as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. I stood there in the middle of my bedroom for a long time, listening to the sound of my own ragged breathing. This was different. This wasn't just technology and money anymore. An hour later, I was on the road. The city lights disappeared in my rearview mirror. My suitcase was on the passenger seat, my wallet had $300 in it, and my gas tank was full. For the first time in weeks, a tiny piece of me started to relax. He couldn't control the open road. I turned on the radio, needing a distraction. A local station was in the middle of a weather report. Well, that's all for now. Expect clear skies through the evening with temperatures dropping into the low 40s. Good news for anyone traveling tonight, the announcer's cheerful voice said. Then the radio crackled. A burst of static, loud and sharp. I reached over to change the station, but before my fingers touched the dial, the static cleared. A different voice came through the speakers. It was low, smooth, and perfectly clear. It was Alexander Sterling. "Where are you going without telling me, Sarah?" I screamed. It was a raw, terrified sound. My hand flew back from the dashboard as if I'd been burned. I stared at the radio, my mind refusing to process what I was hearing. The voice was gone. The pop song that had been playing before the weather report was back on, as if nothing had happened. Just as the singer hit the chorus, the lights on my dashboard flickered. All of them. The speedometer needle dropped to 0. The engine coughed once, a sick, shuddering sound, and then died. Silence. The car coasted for another 100 feet before rolling to a stop on the shoulder of the dark, empty highway. I was in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no houses, just trees and darkness. I slammed my fists against the steering wheel, again and again. No, 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 no! The words were choked sobs. It wasn't a coincidence. The voice, the car, it was him. But how? How? I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, shaking, when a pair of headlights appeared in my mirror. They got closer and pulled up behind me. A tow truck. The flashing yellow lights washed over the inside of my car. A man in greasy overalls got out and walked up to my window. I rolled it down, my hand trembling. "Having some trouble?" he asked, peering in. "My car, it just died," I whispered. "Yeah, that's what they said. Got a call about a gray sedan broken down at this exact mile marker." He shined a flashlight at my car. "Well, you're in luck. I can get you to a garage in the next town over." My blood went cold. Who called you?" He just shrugged. "Dispatch just gives me the location, ma'am. Not my business who calls it in." There was only one garage in the tiny town. The mechanic, a tired-looking man named Dale, told me he'd take a look. I sat in the greasy waiting room under a flickering fluorescent light for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he came back out, wiping his hands on a rag. "Well, it's your fuel pump controller," he said, shaking his head. "Completely fried. Never seen one go like that. I'm gonna have to order the part. It'll take a couple of days to get here." Of course it would. I felt a wave of exhaustion so heavy it was a physical weight. Every door I tried to open led to another wall he had already built. The more I struggled, the tighter the cage became. There was one motel in town, the Sleepy Hollow Inn. The sign was missing the S. I paid for a room in cash. The room smelled like stale smoke and bleach. I locked the deadbolt, jammed the flimsy chain lock, and dragged the desk chair in front of the door. I went into the small, grimy bathroom to splash some water on my face. The face looking back at me from the mirror was a stranger, pale, with dark circles under the eyes that were wide with a fear that was starting to look a lot like madness. I cupped my hands under the faucet and brought the cold water up to my face. It was a shock, but a welcome one. I kept my eyes closed for a moment, just feeling the cold drops run down my skin. I took a deep breath, and I opened my eyes. My reflection's eyes were still closed. My heart didn't just stop, it felt like it vanished from my chest. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move, I could only stare. For a second, maybe two, that's how we stayed. Me, eyes wide with horror, looking at my own face in the mirror with its eyes squeezed shut. Then, slowly, the eyelids in the mirror began to lift. They opened. But they weren't my eyes. They weren't blue. They were a deep, cold brown. They were piercing. They were possessive. They were the eyes of Alexander Sterling. He was looking at me from inside my own face. A noise tried to claw its way out of my throat, but it died before it could become a scream. My legs gave out. I stumbled backward, crashing into the shower curtain, and slid down to the cold, tiled floor. The world tilted, the grimy ceiling spinning above me. This wasn't stalking. This wasn't control. This was something else, something impossible. He wasn't just building the walls around me anymore. He was inside them. He was inside me. I laid on the cold tile of the motel bathroom, the smell of bleach and mold filling my nose. The world was a spinning, blurry mess above me. My own face, his eyes. He wasn't just in my apartment, in my car, in my head. He was wearing my skin like a suit. I don't know how long I stayed there. Minutes? An hour? Eventually, the shaking slowed to a tremor. The frantic hammering in my chest eased into a dull, heavy thud. There was no escape. Running was a joke. Hiding was pointless. If he could look out through my own eyes, where was there to hide? Something broke in me then. Not despair. Something colder. Resignation. The kind you get when you realize the game is rigged. If you can't win by the old rules, you have to figure out the new ones. I drove back to the city. I didn't speed. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. The tow truck driver had called me a cab to the nearest bus station. The ride back was quiet. I just watched the highway markers pass, one by one. I was going back into the cage. But this time, I wasn't going to rattle the bars. I was going to study the lock. Back in my apartment, the security camera felt less like a threat and more like a simple fact. I didn't bother throwing clothes in a suitcase. I sat down at my laptop and I started to dig. I searched for Alexander Sterling, but I went deeper than news articles and stock prices. I looked for anomalies, for things that didn't fit. I found a passing mention of him funding a historical preservation society. I cross-referenced the society's projects. An old shipping magnate's journal from the 1880s, digitized. I read it. The magnate, a man named Alistair Finch, wrote about a young sailor who pulled him from the wreckage of his ship in the North Atlantic. He wrote about his gratitude. And then, for the next 50 pages, he wrote about how his life became a waking nightmare. His business partners turned on him. His wife left him. He was haunted by the sailor's face, seeing it in crowds, in mirrors. He died alone and penniless. In the archived contributor notes at the bottom of the web page, I saw a name, A. Sterling. My fingers flew across the keyboard. It felt like I was piecing together a map of a disease. I found another case, a nurse in London, 1917. She saved a wealthy industrialist from a collapsed building during an air raid. Her letters to her sister spoke of lavish gifts, then of a constant, unnerving presence. She lost her job. Her fiancé broke off their engagement. Her final letter just said, "He is not a man, he is a cage." She was found in the Thames a week later. The industrialist, a recluse named Arthur Stone, lived another 40 years. And there it was again, in a footnote about a private donation that saved the archive from closing in the 90s. Sterling International. It went on and on. Different names, different faces, different centuries. Finch, Stone, a dozen others, all powerful men who cheated death. And for every one of them, there was a savior whose life was systematically dismantled. This wasn't a family curse. It was the same thing, wearing different bodies like a change of clothes. It wasn't a person. It was a process. It was a parasite. My wall was covered in printouts, connected by red yarn like some crazy person in a movie. I stood back, looking at the web of suffering I'd uncovered. It fed on life debt. My life debt. A thought, quiet and sharp, cut through the noise in my head. How do you break it? There has to be a way out, a loophole. The moment the thought formed, my laptop screen went black. Just off. No warning. I reached for the power button, but before my finger touched it, white letters flickered to life in the center of the dark screen. The font was plain, like a line of code. A debt can only be paid with another debt. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled back from the desk, my hand flying to my mouth. It knew. It was listening to my thoughts. It was answering me. The screen stayed like that for a 10 count, then flickered again, and my desktop reappeared, my web of research exactly I'd left it. Oh God, it was taunting me. It was handing me the answer because it knew. It was betting I wouldn't have the stomach to do it. For the first time, I felt a sliver of something that wasn't fear. It was ugly and dark, but it felt like a weapon. It felt like hope. The security panel by my door chirped, unlocked. I spun around. The door swung open slowly. Alexander Sterling stood there. He looked tired, the expensive suit a little rumpled. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "You've been busy," he said. His voice was calm. He gestured to the wall of papers. "Figured out our little secret, have you?" I didn't answer. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. "You have to understand, Sarah. This is an honor," he said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "You're tethered to something ancient, something powerful. You belong to me." He walked past me, not even giving me a second glance. He went to the large window that overlooked the downtown streets, 15 stories below. "It's time for a new vessel," he said, his voice distant, looking down at the river of traffic. "This one is getting worn out." He turned his head and gave me a small, sad smile. "Don't worry, it won't forget you." And then he ran. 2 quick steps, and he threw himself head first through the plate glass window. The sound was like a bomb going off in the small apartment. A deafening crash of shattering glass, followed by a sudden, rushing silence. I screamed, a raw, choked sound. I scrambled to the broken window, my hands gripping the jagged edges of the frame. Below, his body had hit the roof of a yellow taxi. Chaos erupted, horns blared, tires screeched. One car swerved to avoid the taxi, clipping another, which spun out and slammed into a minivan. The minivan flipped onto its side and, with a horrible whoosh, burst into flames. My mind went blank. I could only stare at the carnage below. This wasn't a suicide. This was an arrangement. A stage set just for me. My legs were moving before I even told them to. Down the stairs, pushing past people in the lobby, out onto the street. The air was thick with smoke and the screams of panicked onlookers. I saw his body, a broken thing on top of the crushed taxi. But my eyes, my medic's eyes, were drawn to the fire. Inside the overturned minivan, a woman was trapped. I could see her silhouette against the orange flames, her hands beating against the passenger side window. She was screaming. No one was going near it. They were all standing back, phones out, recording. No, the word screamed in my head. It's a trap. It's a goddamn setup. He wants you to. I looked from the burning van to Alexander's body. The woman's screams were getting weaker. I heard sirens in the distance, but they were too far away. She didn't have that long. My training, 5 years of it, was a physical thing inside me, a reflex I couldn't stop. You don't let someone die when you can help. You just don't. Fuck it. Fuck him. I ran. I ripped my jacket off and wrapped it around my fist, smashing the back window of the van. The heat was intense, searing my skin. I crawled inside, the smoke instantly blinding me. I found her, unhooked her seatbelt, and dragged her dead weight out through the broken window just as a secondary explosion rocked the vehicle, throwing us both to the pavement. I rolled her onto her back. She was young, maybe my age. Soot covered her face. I put my ear to her mouth. Nothing. No breath. I checked her carotid artery. No pulse. The sirens were closer now, but not close enough. My hands went to her chest, finding the right spot without thinking. I started compressions. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I pinched her nose, tilted her head back, and sealed my mouth over hers, breathing my own air into her lungs. The exact same thing I did for him. The thought was a flash of ice in my gut, but I pushed it down. I kept going, pumping, breathing, pumping, breathing. Come on, come on. After the second breath, she choked, a deep, rattling gasp. Her eyes flew open. She coughed, rolling onto her side, smoke and fluid coming out of her mouth. She was alive. And in that exact instant, I felt it. A profound, bone-deep coldness lifted from me. A weight I didn't even know I was carrying was just gone. The constant hum of anxiety in my veins fell silent. I could breathe. For the first time in weeks, I could actually breathe. I was free. I had survived. I staggered to my feet, gasping for air, my lungs burning. The woman's purse had been thrown onto the asphalt. Her phone was lying next to it, screen up. It started to ring. She weakly reached for it, fumbling with the button. She put it to her ear, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. I was only a few feet away. I could hear the voice on the other end, tinny and distant, but clear enough. "Thank you," it said. "Thank you for giving me more time." It was the voice of Alexander Sterling.